Okay, this may be a bit of a hot take, but I want to talk about how there is an awful lot of white feminism in the comments of my two videos about America's falling fertility rate. And also, on my first video, several people thought they were correcting me when I said fertility rate. They said, no, it's birth rate, not fertility rate. No, it is fertility rate. The term is total fertility rate, TFR. That's a specific term in population dynamics. It means the average number of children a woman would have in her lifetime if she experienced the current age-specific fertility rates throughout her childbearing years. The United States has now fallen below 1.6. The TFR is not actually how many babies are being born in a given year. It's the overall fertility rate for your nation and how many children women can expect to have in their lifetime given the current rate of reproduction. So pump the brakes a second and check the facts before you come at me in the comments. I understand that colloquially, a lot of folks refer to it as a birth rate, but the birth rate is actually how many live births you have per 1,000 people. The TFR is used as a measure to help understand population dynamics and how much the population of a given country is growing or shrinking. So it is a projection, a conceptualization of how many children, given the current set of circumstances, a woman will have in her lifetime. But yes, I understand that colloquially people conflate the two things, but they actually are different. Let's get to the white feminism in the comments, because I saw so many people who were saying, let's get the birth rate even lower. How low can we take it? Falsely believing that the lower the birth rate, the better it is for a society. And then I think also conflating folks' own personal choice not to have children with it being a moral good and like a win for women all over when the birth rate gets lower and lower and lower. And I got a whole slew of comments from white women who were like, yeah, well, look at these European countries with very low birth rates. They're all doing great. Look at these Scandinavian countries. Look at Italy. Look at Germany. Heck, look at Japan. Look at South Korea. These are all countries with birth rates below 1.6, some of them as low as like 0.77, South Korea. Italy, I think, is 1.23, and Japan is about the same, 1.24. And I was like, y'all, that's not a good scene to have an aging population. That's not good for a society overall. Folks said, well, you can just rely on immigration. I think this comment here, I think most of the creators who are saying it's great that the birth rate is low and let's get it even lower are not seeing this as a win for women, but a way to push back against the system that is failing us, viewed as a way to starve out capitalism by cutting off their supply of laborers. So I am just going to push back against this as an anti-capitalist. This is not how you fuck capitalism over. Deciding not to reproduce is not how you bring capitalism to its knees. It actually creates a dynamic in which migrant workers from other countries, vulnerable populations who are from less developed nations where they have less access to education and birth control than you do, are brought in to those wealthy countries with a very low birth rate and exploited. And that's precisely what I mean when I see people who are lauding uncritically very low birth rates in some of these other countries and saying we should drive ours down as low as we possibly can, are doing a white feminism. Because you're not actually in solidarity with and supporting women in the global majority when you take up this position. You are putting the burden of childbearing and child rearing on the global majority and then exploiting those children when they reach adulthood for labor in your country. Because the thing is that the bosses, those who control the means of production, the oligarchs, they will be like, oh, sweet, okay, I don't have to worry about paying white people who won't work as hard and demand higher pay. Those pesky union workers who want better wages and worker protections. Shit, low birth rate? I don't have to bother with those fuckers anymore. I can just go bring in immigrant labor. From other countries who are desperate for work, are easier to exploit, don't demand the same kind of pay or job safety protection, and they work a lot harder. They're much more efficient, produce a higher quality of work. Fuck yeah, low TFR. That means that I can justify bringing in immigrant labor and exploiting those workers because it will be necessary to care for this aging population of white folks. or whatever the majority is in that country. I appreciated this commenter who had a similar sentiment. It actually rewards capitalism. They can easily get workers from other countries in 10 to 20 years, and in the meantime, they do not have to fund education or provide benefits for families or pay living wages. Instead of young workers having families and fighting for paid maternity leave and living wages, and I would argue better healthcare, universal healthcare, they now have tons of young, active workers who need less money and can work countless hours without interruption because they aren't parents. So there's a significant extent to which right now it's beneficial for the oligarchs for us to not be having children. Then we can give more of our life hours to the machine. But also, as our population ages, the capitalists can bring in exploited migrant labor. It becomes very colonialist, very exploitive, very racist, very, very quickly. To think that a very low birth rate is good for your country, while at the same time having a capitalist system that is inherently set up to exploit migrant labor, and an immigration policy and a mindset of the country that immigrant workers are somehow going to come and fill our needs, and that they're going to continue breeding and providing cheap labor for our economy. It's real gross. It gets real gross real quickly. And I'm not like pulling this out of thin air. This is a problem in some of those countries y'all lauded in the comments that have a very low birth rate. They have significant problems with exploiting their migrant workers who are coming in to do the jobs that they can no longer fill because they have a rapidly aging population. This is a big problem in Italy, which has a TFR of 1.23. They have asylum seekers and migrants who come through, and they use Italy as a transition point to move on to other countries in Europe, but they get stuck because Italy wants them. They need them, especially for agricultural labor. According to this report from migrationpolicy.org, during the 1990s, you saw decreasing birth rates across Southern Europe, which resulted in massive labor shortages. And Italy's solution to this was trying to compensate with asylum seekers coming through the country and hoping to transition elsewhere into Europe. Italy actually had the Consolidated Immigration Act in the 90s, which tried to recruit foreign workers to come in and do their farm labor for them. So there's now a policy in the European Union where if an asylum seeker steps on your soil, your country is responsible for that person. They can't advance through the asylum process and move to another country until that initial country processes their paperwork. And Italy has actually created this condition called involuntary immobility, where they have such a labor shortage that they are trying to keep these immigrants within their borders, even when they don't want to stay there. It has become a trap for asylum seekers who enter the EU through Italy. And they get trapped in this kind of limbo where they're then exploited for their labor and have a very unstable future within Italy's borders, and they can't leave. There are similar problems in pretty much all of the other European countries that are well below replacement. They rely on immigration, but then have systems that are inherently exploitive of immigrant laborers. But it's not just in Europe. Japan has had a long history of abusing and exploiting migrant workers in their country. For more than 15 years, Japan's TFR has been falling and their population has been shrinking. According to International Policy Digest, in 2023 alone, Japan lost 800,000 people from its population. Japan's death rate is currently twice its birth rate, and a recent study found that 6.8 million foreign workers would be needed by 2040 to achieve sustainable economic growth within Japan's borders. That's quadruple the number of workers that they currently have. In the 90s, Japan created the Technical Training Intern Program, which sounded like they were trying to recruit workers from mostly East Asian countries, but reports from Japan's own labor ministry from 2017 show that this bureaucratic tool was nothing more than a way to facilitate forced labor. The labor ministry found widespread violation of labor and immigrants' rights laws. It also found that the government was unable to be effective in monitoring worker conditions for foreign immigrants. There are also individual stories of exploitation. In one report, a 33-year-old Filipino woman came to Japan pursuing the promise of a competitive wage and an opportunity to learn new skills. When she signed her contract in Japanese, a language she barely spoke, the company seized her passport and her college diploma. They basically trapped her and thousands of other workers in Japan, forcing them to work jobs they didn't sign up for exploitive wages. I mean, I don't even have time to get into South Korea and how their very low birth rate has resulted in heavy migrant labor exploitation. If there was ever a subject where we needed to embrace intersectionality, where we needed to look beyond our white feminism and understand the complexities of this situation, It's got to be when we're talking about immigration, TFR, and population dynamics.